everybody, it's Claire here from Sewn by Claire, and today is a very momentous day because I'm finally getting around to making the very last kit that I was sponsored by some of my very generous subscribers earlier. I can't even say earlier this year. I think it was last year, if not the year before. And I am really, really sorry to Colleen Moulson Hughes, because Colleen gifted this gift kit to me in order that I could make a video tutorial for you. And unfortunately, with a series of events that I won't go into now, that has never happened until now. So we've got the kit from Cool Crafting. I'll put their address up here, which is part of the Luna Lapin range, and it's for Freya's Playsuit and for Freya's Opera Coat. Now today this is in the Luna Lapin Making New Friends books, that's the one that it is. Now today I'm only going to be making the Playsuit, but close on its heels, hopefully. I'm not promising, but hopefully close on its heels will be the Opera Coat to finish that complete outfit, and then your character can have a party outfit then to wear for whatever they want to. Now the character that wears this outfit is Freya, which is the deer here, or the fawn, whatever you want to call it. And it's made out of this beautiful taffeta fabric here. So it's got a lovely stiffness to it that feels very party kind of party-esque, is that a word? We've also from the kit got the fusible web that we need, and the inside there as well as some buttons as well that we need to complete the outfit. So we're going to take it step by step as we normally do. This is part of the Luna Lapin range that has been designed by Sarah Peel for Cool Crafting, and as I've put their website up for you. I'm not associated with Cool Crafting in any way. I've just previously enjoyed making the characters and their clothing, and then have made these videos in order to help you do the same. And the response has been really good to all of my videos, so thank you to everybody who's taken the time to give me a thumbs up or to leave a comment. Obviously, just depending on the content that I film and upload, then that can shape future projects, as we know. And I'm currently chasing 4,000 subscribers. So if you have seen any of my content before and enjoyed it, but you aren't a subscriber, put my hands down, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd consider subscribing to my channel and help me get over that 4,000 mark, because that would mean the absolute world to me. And you never know, we might well have some more Luna content at some stage, because I know that somebody has asked me very recently for a video on how to make Uma the elephant as well. So I can't promise, but you never know. Right, all that said, thank you very much to Colleen. My sincere apologies, Colleen, as well, for the time it's taken me to get around to this, but I'm working on the basis that late is better than never. So here we go. I'm just popping you back to the Future style to show you the finished garment. So here is Luna's finished Playsuit, so you can have a look and see if that's the type of garment and the kind of finish you would like for your character. So the bloomers are actually sewn into the top, so it's all one piece. And then we've got some press studs on the back here for opening and closing. We've neatened the edge here, and we've got a nice neat finish on the inside. I have varied from the instructions slightly in terms of giving this a slightly nicer finish than the book would have achieved, but that's up to you if you want to follow my instructions, but hopefully you'll enjoy sewing this along with me. Just a word of warning, if you are sewing, this is my character. Let me just measure my chest of my character. Because if you are sewing this for one of the other characters with a different body shape, so if your character is bigger than 21 centimetres under the arms and around, you may want to add some extra length to your bodice here on the edge here. So let me get the pattern piece on the section here. I do talk about it later, just to add some extra fabric on there. And I also talk, because I try this on Ottoline towards the end of the video, and she needs extra room because it won't do up at the back. So if you're using the character body that has the 3 sections to it and has the external fitting legs, I would recommend you just add a little bit more room in the pattern, but I show you how to do that towards the end. So jump to that bit first if you're making it for a character that's any wider than 21 centimetres under the arms, but if not, then you can carry on with this one with confidence, and this is the kind of garment you will have and finish. And it does finish with a little knot at the back. It is a halter neck garment. Okay, I'll shush and let you get on with the sewing. Okay, so you're going to need your book. Here's Freya in her lovely opera coat on the front. As I say, that's going to be a different tutorial that we'll be following soon. So you're going to want to turn to the first page, which is page 62, and we can see a picture of the halter neck outfit here, which I think is like a shorts type situation, and then this overdress over the top. So this video might come in two parts. We'll start with maybe the shorts first and then move on to the dress and do it that way round, and then that's the way that you would dress this character if you were wearing them. So we'll do that. But the important thing to note is that we will do all of the cutting out in this part, because we can't just cut out the shorts without laying out the pattern for the dress, because we don't know that we'll have enough fabric if we cut out one without the other. So I always recommend, when you've got one finite piece of fabric and you want to get your outfit out of it in totality, always cut it out at the same time. So that said, you're then going to need to turn to pages 138, 139 and 140 and 141 in order to then, oh, sorry, something's just dropped. I was tidying up my room just before filming. In order to make this outfit and have the patterns, you're going to need a little bit of tissue paper. I always recommend tracing your patterns out of your book. If anybody has followed me before, then trace your patterns out of your book in order that you can preserve the book as a master copy of the pattern. You can photocopy it and use that, but photocopying paper is very stiff for using on top of a character, on top of a fabric. Or you can go to the website of the publisher, where I believe you can print out the patterns at full size as well, so they're there for you. So all I'm going to do is take my tracing paper, I'm going to lay it over my pattern and smooth it out, and then I'm going to trace along the solid thick black line, including any notches such as here, any directions such as this straight of grain on all of those pieces. So this is the bloomers. We then got the Playsuit halter neck. This is the top part, that's the strap, and that's the skirt of the Playsuit, and that's it. So okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. So if you want to trace all of your pattern pieces, there is a video on my channel how to trace off pattern pieces if you just want a little bit more help and it may be your first time making anything like this or tracing off. So please do go and have a look at that video if you need to, and then just come back to this one. I'm going to get this traced off. Then the other thing that I'm going to say is that in the actual instructions for the Playsuit, which are on the page 62 and 63, there is a cutting out guide here, a way to lay your pattern out. So I'm going to follow that in order to try and keep this video as short as possible. So I will be following that, or that, yes, that is for the Playsuit, in order that we can then know where we are, and you don't need to see a different way of doing it. You can just do this exact way. Then I'll come back to you when we're ready to start the sewing. One other thing to note before I get on with this is that it does say that in this layout guide just here for your fabric, you've got to note that Freya's opera coat lining is also included here. So don't think that you've just got those bits. You need to include the front bodice and the back bodice of the opera coat pattern as well, so that you've got those two pieces ready for using for your opera coat when you come to make that. So therefore make sure you include those pieces at the same time and cut them out of your taffeta as well, because you'll be needing them from the other section. Okay, so I've traced all of my pattern pieces out, and I traced out the opera coat while I was there because I needed the front and the back anyway, so I just needed the sleeves and the skirt. But what I'm going to do first, before we start to cut this out, is I'm just going to iron out these packing creases in the kit fabric. And to do that, I'm going to use a press cloth over the top of my fabric. So my fabric's on my wool pressing mat, and then this silk organza, and I like to use silk organza because it's transparent and I can see it through it. You can buy silk organza through the internet, very it is cost effective. I think it's about £10 a metre, £10–12 a metre, something like that. And you only need, as you see, you only need a small strip, so even a metre or half a metre would probably be enough, right, as either half or quarter metre, and you'll get yourself 4 or 5 out of that. And I just overlock the seams. If you've not got any silk organza to hand, you can use a fabric handkerchief, you know, the kind that our grandmas and granddads used to use, or you can use a thin tea towel or a thin pillowcase, something like that, or a piece of fabric from your stash. You just need something that can stand the heat of the iron in order that you don't damage this taffeta, because the taffeta should be treated like a speciality fabric in order that it doesn't get spoiled. So I'm just going to use a little bit of steam and a little bit of movement on this just to get these packing lines out, and they should fall out quite quickly. And I would suggest that you do the same to your fabric before you start to cut it out. Okay, so we're all pressed and I've got my pattern. I'm just about to put that down, and I have folded the fabric along the selvage edge. The selvage edge is the one with the bound edge, which is here, as you can see, that fluffy edge on it. And then I'm going to also be using my silk pins as well. So I've got these pins here, which have got these pink, red and white tops to them, but they're actually very thin, so they're really good for going through delicate fabrics. They're not a lot of money. These ones are by Clover silk pins. I bought the boxed ones because then I can keep them in the box. There's the barcode if you need to know about those. I can't remember how much they were, so I can't help you. But these leave a smaller mark in the fabric when you're pinning. So in that respect then, you won't have such a issue, hopefully, with pin marks going through your fabric. Taffeta isn't quite as forgiving as cotton for pin marks in the wrong place. So I would highly recommend that when you are pinning your pattern pieces to your fabric, you try and stay within the seam allowances as much as possible. Okay, so I'm just going to follow the guide that's in the book, and I'm going to just pop these pattern pieces on. If your pins don't want to go through, just give it a little twist on the end and then it should go through. But the fibres on the woven taffeta fabric are much tighter together than that on a cotton, so you will just need to take your time whilst you're pinning to get that absolutely straight. Okay, let me come back to you when I've got this all laid out, and we'll do a pattern piece check before we then start to actually cut out our fabric. Okay, so here we are. We've got the skirt for the halter top down in this corner. We've got the top for the opera coat here. We've then got the straps. Now you'll only have one piece, and it might say cut 4 on it, but out of the paper pattern I've done 2 separate pieces. They're both the same, these 2 long strips just here are. One says straps for the Playsuit and one says cuff for the bloomers, and that was because I wanted to make sure I got this level right before putting on the actual bloomers part of the trouser part of the bloomers, in order that we got this height here correctly, because I could otherwise have put it down here and then the strap, sorry, there wouldn't have been enough room to fit the strap in there. We could have fitted it in over here, but we ran the risk of getting in towards our selvage edge. So that's why I've got these 2 pieces. So each one says cut 2 now, rather than the one piece in the book that says cut 4. It also means I don't forget it as well. I've got the back of the opera coat just here. I've got my first part of the halter neck top just here for the front, and we've actually got to cut 2 on the fold of that, so I will move that one up after I've cut it out for the first one. I know I've got room because we know that that piece there fits. And we've got the trousers for the bloomers. So once you've got yourself to that stage and you're happy you've got all of your pattern pieces there, then what we're going to do then is we're going to cut these out and get started. Okay, so we're all cut out. I've just put the scraps from my fabric back into my package. I've got the centre back and the fronts for the opera coat, and I'm going to just pop those as they are just straight into there for the next tutorial. I've then got the bloomers and the strap for the cuffs, and I've got the skirt, the 2 bodice fronts and the straps there for the halter top Playsuit. So I'm just going to leave that to one side as well, because we're going to work first on our bloomers, and first thing we're going to do is just get some snips, and we're just going to mark in these little notches. There's a notch on this top edge here, and there's a notch on the back just here, I believe. And that's it really. So for now, I'm just going to take the pins out. We're going to get the machine loaded up with some matching thread. There's no thread in the kit. And then we are going to then get started on making this pattern. So all of these pins will go back into my silk pins box so that I don't get them mixed up with my ordinary pins. Okay, let's leave just one pin in for the strap because I think we'll be working with that afterwards, or the cuff, should I say. And then we're ready to go. All the pattern pieces can come off. We're going to be working with this straight away and pop those in your Ziploc bag or your freezer bag in order for using for later. Okay, let me get onto the right pages and we'll get started. Okay, so just reading through the instructions, and it's always a good thing to do because what I've realised is that the waist of the bloomers here actually sits inside the top of the Playsuit here. So the skirt and the bloomers are all joined in as one item. So whilst I've said I'm going to do, it probably will still be 2 videos. I'll see how long it takes me, but it might just be 1, but we'll need the parts for the top as well. So we might as well just do it in the order that Sarah's done it and get our top and our straps out ready, and we'll do it all as one video. So we are going to be working with the strap for the tops, the straps for the top, and we are going to be working with the skirt here. So on the Playsuit skirt, at the top here we've got a pleat, so I would just put a little snip in there. We'll mark that little part there with a tailor's tack, and then we've also got a little snip here to make for probably for the back of that. Oh, and one on the side here as well. So just go through and mark those 3 points, and then let's get a needle and thread together and let's mark for our pleat before we do anything else. So we want a contrast colour for our thread. Let me get something. Let's use this white, this will do. Let's just take off a length, we've only got that one to do. Thread your needle. There we go. So we have the 2 ends the same. If you've not done tailor's tacks before, if you have, you can just jump ahead a little bit. So we've got 2 lengths, a double length of thread through the needle, but we've not got a knot on the end. We look for the dot where the pleat is, and we're just going to take a stitch either side that dot from east to west or west to east, whichever way, and then we're going to take another stitch through from north to south. So we leave an end, about an inch long end on our first stitch, and we're going to make the loop with our second stitch until it's about the same length as the ends. And then we're going to snip off, leaving a long tail too. Once we've done that, we snip through the loop in order to make that just a tuft of threads, just like that. And then we're going to take our pins out. Again, got to keep reminding myself to keep those pins separately. And then we're going to hold on to just start to lift off the pattern, then just hold on to your thread to keep it together. Pattern can go away. And then we're going to open out our fabric, because if you look, the stitches go through and you get a little cross on the wrong side, on the other side of your fabric, and on one side you've got the tufts. And then what you do, this is a good way of marking your fabric without using a pen or chalk. And then we separate the 2 pieces of fabric slightly until we've got a bridge of threads. So we need to leave some tuft on that side and the cross on that side. And then when we've got a bridge of threads, we'll just use our snips and just go through them in the middle. And what you end up with is these 2 sets of tufts now. One's just here and one's just there. And they're marked front and back for us. So you've got a little cross there and a tuft this side. So we've got that place now marked in the right area. Okay, so what we're going to do then next is we are going to be working with our straps first. So let's get our strap for our Playsuit. Put our pattern piece away. Now Sarah says to turn these and to turn these round, but I've had problems with that before, as you might have noticed on another video. I had right sides together. So I'm going to first of all get my ironing board, and we're going to press these in half and then in half again. Let's first press in a 1/4 of an inch seam. This is a good way of doing it for anybody who has problems turning things out and around the other way round, as I do sometimes. Especially on these small garments, they don't always want to turn around, do they? So that's one done, one side done. Let's do the other side now. This is where the silk organza becomes handy because you can see through it. Pin that side down. And then I'm going to fold these when it's cooled off. I'm going to fold these in half so that those folded edges are together. Don't worry about the ends at the moment because we're going to have messy ends, but we're going to sort those out in a minute. And you want to have those so that the ends are together. If you keep burning your fingers, just take some pins and just pin into your pressing mat or your ironing board on the edge that you want to hold together. And you'll be able to iron up to those without burning your fingers then. Okay, so pressing cloth can go back down again after those pins are on, and I can press in between those pins to give me the folded edge on this edge. And now that that's going to stay still for me, I can take my pins out, save them for the next job, and just give it another press over without the pins in. Now, because taffeta does tend to be a bit bouncy, it will fight back to you. Let that just cool off, and then you're going to have your piece of fabric looking like this with your fold in the middle, look, and those edges folded in. And then you'll be able to we'll be able to stitch down the edge of those. Okay, so now I'm just going to repeat that same process for the other strap so that we'll then have 2 straps the same. So I'm just loading up my machine, and I'm just loading up with a new needle because this has got a nice sharp point to it, and these are the ones that I like to use. It's a Schmetz Microtex, and the size I'm using today is a 70 or a 10. So that's the size I'm using. A Microtex needle just has a really nice point on it, and that works really well with these types of fabrics. So if you've not changed your needle in a while, then it's a good idea to change it for the start of a project, especially as we're using a speciality fabric, but you do need to go smaller. So a 70 or a 60 would be great for using for this purpose. Okay, so I've got my thread loaded up as well. I'm using a Gutterman thread just to make that nice and easy. It's just a reasonable colour match. It's a little bit pale, but that means you'll be able to see the stitches, which I don't mind, but obviously you would use your coordinating thread that you've chosen to go with this fabric. Just thread my needle. And if you've got a needle threader, I would urge you to make friends with it. It is a great addition to your sewing. You tell them how to practice, can't you, with the tutorials? My brain keeps telling me, you've not told them this, Claire. You've not told them that. So we need to have one neat edge because this Playsuit is actually halter neck, although there's no picture of it on the back here. So we need one edge to be nice. The other edge is going to be hidden inside the bodice top. So what we're going to do is, while we've got this open, we're just going to fold it over like that at the top to give us a little edge to work with. But what I like to do is I like to take a little triangle. So let's just press that with our fingers just so we get a little bit of a crease. So I've got about 1/2 inch I've just taken across. I'm going to take a little slither, a little triangle, out of the centre of this strap. Put my little finger down. Has anybody ever noticed I keep sticking out my little finger? It's like I'm having tea with the Queen. I do apologise for that. It's just one of my quirks. So I've just taken out that little triangle, and it's going up to, but not right at, that folded edge just there. Can you see? I've got a little fold in there, and I've not gone right up to it, because then when we fold this over, what we can do is we can angle in the side points away from that folded edge like that. Can you see how that's folded in? Oops. This is the thing with taffeta, it's very bouncy, so it doesn't always sit where you want it to. So those edges corners are folded in, and we have still got a bit of the folded edge at the edge, at the folded edge here, so that when we fold that across, we can stitch that with those edges inside, so you don't have them poking out on the edge. Let me just put a pin through that, and then I will show you on the other end what can happen sometimes if you don't take that little triangle out when you want to neaten off the edges. So if we just folded this across like this, and then we just then folded into the middle, what you can get on the edge of your corners is these edges sticking out. I'm trying to get the right angle for you so you can actually see that. And it won't matter how many times you press that, once you start to sew it, those corners are going to pop out. So by taking that little slither out in the middle here, you take out some of the bulk, and that enables those corners to be pushed to the inside without making a bump. And then when you sew it down, you've not got those corners to contend with. Try it and give it a go and see what you think. Obviously all of these things you can try and see if you like it or not. So I'm just going to take my stick in my machine. I'm going to go across the short flat end first, and we're going to try and get towards the closely edge. I'm not going to reverse stitch, and I'm going to take out my pin and put a stitch right in the very end. With my needle down in the work, then I'm going to lift up my presser foot, spin my fabric round, and then I'm going to go down the long straight edge. I haven't reversed on the short end. Just take your time. If yours won't come through, just pull on the back threads if you've got them in order to help that come through the machine. It just means it's got stuck on the bulk of the corner. Make sure everything's staying nice and tucked in. Although we've pressed it, taffeta does have a tendency just to misbehave. I've not reversed on the end because it's going to be tucked inside the garment. So then we're left with our long threads on the end here. Look, that's our stitching along the short edge there. That's all fine, I'm happy with that. And then I want to find a needle. First of all, we're going to pull on one thread, so we've got a loop. So you've got a loop comes through from the other end, other side. So we're going to end up with both pieces of thread on the same side. This is just giving you a really nice finish. This is why we do it. I do it like this. Get that loop so we can see it. There's the loop. Thread your needle through. Pull it out. So now I've got no threads on that side and they're both on this side. So now I'm going to tie 2 knots tightly without snapping my thread, hopefully. Just one. And there's the other one. And then I'm going to cut off my thread so that they're both the same length. I'm going to thread them onto my needle, both of them. And where that little knot is that we've just done, I'm going to put my needle in right where that knot is, and I'm going to feed my needle down in between the 2 sides of the taffeta strap. I'm going to go down about an inch, 3/4 of an inch to an inch, so just in the middle there, so you can see the needle coming out here and going in there, but on that side you can't see any needle at all. And then I'm going to give it a pull. Make sure the threads are in the right place for being pulled. So that's got needles gone right in by that knot. And then when I pull on those threads and then just give it a little pull, it's going to pull that knot down inside the tie. And if we put some pressure, so it just bunches up the strap a little bit, and then snip those threads off, the ends disappear back into the strap, but you've got a nice long tail, so that's not going to come undone, and you've got a nice end on the end just there. No bit sticking out on the edge, so that's all good. So go ahead, once you've done that on one of them, then go ahead and make your other strap, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, so once we've got our 2 straps all ready to go, we're going to then need our bodice pieces. We've got 1 notch to mark on here, and that needs to go through all 4 edges of that fabric at that time. Let's take our pins out. Pattern piece goes away. And then we're going to open these out. So I had my right sides facing, so that's the two right sides up. Now we're going to work with this long straight edge here. And what we need to do is we need to take the raw edge that we've got on our strap, the fluffy edge, not the neatened edge. And we're going to place it, I'm going to put it so the sewn side is on the is touching the notch. And the strap is going to sit on the point side of the notch. So here's my notch just here that I've just cut, and my strap is sitting just inside that notch. I'm just going to pin that in place. Try and do it through the seam allowance if you can do, just to hold that. And then I'm going to take my other one and I'm going to make sure that I've got the raw edge again. My sewn edge is going to go on the outside, and I'm going to put that one on the other notch, touching the other notch, so the sewn side is on the other notch. And I'm just going to pin that one in place as well. That's it, just going to hold those together. So here's my notch just there, and my straps, and there's my other notch just there, and my straps are sitting on the inside closest to the point. We're then going to take the other right side, we're going to lay that over the top so that that matches perfectly, and we are going to match that. So let's match the points first, get those right. Just pop a pin in the middle. Just to hold that. We can then, if we pinch, we can put the notches on top of each other, we can then pinch that strap and readjust the pin that was holding it so that it now goes through all of the layers. Oh, give it a squeeze, twist if it doesn't want to go through. Same on the other side. Let's just pin that strap in place. That's it. And then we're going to take our fabric along to our corners, match up our corners, and the same this side, and then we're going to sew along the two short edges and then along this top edge, the top straight edge. So we're going to sew, I don't know why I've got a little cut on there, let me just trim this off because that shouldn't be there. I think I didn't neaten up that edge when I was just cutting it out. So we're going to start here and sew up to this corner. We're going to leave our needle in our work and pivot, and then we're going to go all the way along this top edge, going through the straps as well. If a child's going to be playing with this garment, just go back and reinforce that as well. Do a second row of stitches. And then across the centre front here where the point is, but we're on this straight edge, across through the other strap again, reinforce it if you want, down to the edge here, and then we're going to then just come down the side. We're going to reverse at the start of the stop as well. And we're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's reverse. Just make sure that your fabric's not your machine doesn't suck your fabric down into the throat of the machine. Needle down into the work, lift up your presser foot, and then you can then spin. Let's take this first pin out now that that's anchored down, and now we're going to sew along this edge here. Coming up to a strap, let's just make sure that strap's laying flat, and now just hold your straps still while you're going across, just so they don't get moved when you go across them. Reverse then if you want to as well. Let's carry on. Mine's not going to be played with, so that's okay. So reverse across over the other strap and carry on to the next corner. Needle in your work, lift up your presser foot, twist, and then down to the end. And reverse at the end. Needle out to the work. Oh, my machine does keep jumping like that, so apologies for that. It's a bit, I think it's got a broken spring in it somewhere. Okay, so that's what we've got. So across the short edge, along this flat long edge, and then down the short edge again. Before we turn it, let's just take off a little bit of fabric in that corner, just take off the edge at 45 degrees, and that will just make sure that that doesn't then get too bulky. And then we can then turn this around the right way round, just very gently. And again on this side here, very gently. And I'm going to need to use something just to make sure that those corners pop out just gently. So I've got my seam gauge, it's got a little point on there. I can just gently coax that out, up and out, to make sure we've got a nice corner on the edge there. Just roll your seam between your finger and thumb just so that that's sitting nicely. And then let's come down to this other side here. Let's do the other edges. Let's do the corners first, and then we can make everything else sit properly once we've got to that point there. Okay. And also the other thing we can do with taffeta is we can just score with our finger across that seam line as well. Just pull it across just to give it a bit of something to find that edge. And what we're going to do then is just use our press cloth and our pressing mat, and we're just going to press this flat. You don't need to see me do that, but that's the front of our play suit for Freya, looking all lovely. So let me just go and press, and then I shall meet you back here when you get yourself to the same stage. Okay, so let's put the top to one side now, because we're going to be working on the bloomers first, and we're going to be working on the cuff of the bloomers. So we've got the trousers here, and what we need to be doing is we need to sew 2 lines of gathering thread along this bottom edge. So the shorter edge is the waistband, and it scoops down and then out, and this wider edge along the bottom here, this is the line that we're going to be working with. Now I would recommend that you change your thread colour for your gathering stitches in order that it makes it easier for you to see where you are. So let me just see what colour. I've got some white here, let's use that. Okay, so let's just thread the machine up with your alternative colour, because it does help you identify where your gathering stitches are and which are your stitches that you want to keep. It only takes a few moments. So we are going to take one, now because we've got our bloomers and we're going to be working with them, let's mark the right side first. So let me just get 2 red pins. And I know that my right sides were together, so I'm going to open my bloomers out, and this is my right side, so I'm just going to put a pin in the waistband there to say that's my right side, and I'm going to put a pin in the same place there. So it just tells me that where the pin is, that's my right side of my fabric, because we're going to be using these backwards and forwards, and we need to just make sure we get it right. So the pin denotes which is, and I've done it in the seam allowance or near enough so that it's not then going to mark in the middle of the fabric. So what we're going to do now is we are going to lengthen our stitch slightly. We want a straight stitch, but we perhaps take it up to a 3, and we're going to loosen off our tension on our machine as well. So mine normally is a 5, I've loosened it off to a 2, and now we're going to sew just one row just underneath 1/4 of an inch. Don't reverse, just sew straight along. And then break your thread, leaving it, you need to leave some ends on it as well, so don't if you've got a machine that cuts your threads for you, make sure that you don't use that feature. And then again another row of stitches, so we've got 2 rows of stitches. Again leaving a thread, so that's what you're going to end up with. 2 rows of white stitches on there with long edges here, because what we do then is you're going to work with our bobbin stitches, which is on the wrong side. We're going to separate out the threads, so we've got our 2 bobbin threads there and our 2 top threads here, because then if we hold on to those bobbin threads and pinch the fabric between our finger and our thumb, we can then pull on those threads and pull the fabric back, and look what happens, we get some lovely gathers. So that's what we can do. I always go from each end, so again working with your bobbin threads, I found that side tends to gather better than using the top threads. Just use a quick unpick or something just to separate them out if you need to. So you've got the two right threads. It won't work if you've got one top and one bottom thread. You've got to have both rows of your bobbin thread in your fingers, and then you can then again just gather that up. You can just work from side to side in towards the middle, and that will give you a good set of gathers. You're looking for even gathers, so you see where those are all a bit bunched up and those are a bit further apart. Just even them out so that they're looking nice. How long does this need to be? Let's have a little look on our instructions and just see until it measures about 13 centimetres or 5 inches. So there's 5 inches on there. Let's have a look and see. No, we're too long at the moment. We need to go in a little bit more. Just make sure they're nice and even all the way along. So that will give you the best finish. Let's have a look now. 5.5 inches, a little bit more in. So if you get to your length, required length first, you can then start and even out your gathers after that, once you've done that. So that's one then there. And that's got those all sorted out. Okay, so we're going to do exactly the same to the other one. We're going to do this long edge with the 2 rows of gathering stitches, and then we're going to gather that up until it's approximately 5 inches or 13 centimetres. So once you've done that, let me meet back here. Just remember to always have the top of your fabric up, and then you'll know where your bottom fabric, your bobbin threads are, because they'll always be on the underneath. Okay, so now we've got our legs gathered. Let's take out the pin for the pattern piece for our leg cuff. Let's pop that away in the bag. And then what we're going to do is separate them out. I got right sides together, haven't I? Let me just put a pin in that one while I'm not using it, just to remind me which my right side is. That will do. And this is the right side of this one. So we're going to put it, find our right side of our tops, that's my right side, and we're going to put the right side of the fabric against the right side of the cuff. And I'm going to, let me get my pins. And then we're going to pin it. I usually pin at the ends first, because then we can adjust the gathers. Let me just make sure how long this piece of fabric is first. That's just over 5 inches, so you don't need all of it. I'm just going to take off. Let me just have a look and see how long it is. Yeah, it's about half an inch over. I'm just going to take a little bit off the end. Make sure you take the same amount off the other end. So I've taken off about half an inch off the end. Because it was 5.5 inches and we've done our gathers to 5 inches. And then I'm going to pin the other end onto this part here. It's looking like that just to start off. So we've got a straight edge on the cuff, and there's our gathers on the back. And now, using our longer bobbin threads, we can just gather this along now to make sure that it's the right size for fitting our cuff. Let me move one out of the way for you so you can see I'm only working on one. And then once we're happy with that, matching the right end edges together of the cut edges of our fabric and our gathers together, let's just pin that into place, making sure those gathers are as even as possible. And you'll notice that your taffeta likes to fray as well, don't worry about that. This hem's going to be completely encased, so you'll be fine. And again, just that last little bit, just make sure your edges are together. So So it's looking straight on the top there, we've not pinned in any puckers at all. And then on the other side you've got all of your gathers. And I've got the heads of my pins sticking out here, so they'll be easy to pull out as we go across. So I'm going to put the flat side of my cuff against the bed of my sewing machine. I'm going to change my thread out of my gathering stitches for now and rethread it with my best thread. The other thing that we really need to do, and it's really easy to forget, is that when you've been doing your gathering, just check your tension again. Make sure you've put it back to where you need it to be. Mine needs to be number 5 and currently it's on a number 2. So let's get this threaded up first. A little bit of fluff on there as well, get rid of that. And then move our dial of our tension to number 5 again. So that just tightens up those stitches again. We don't want loose stitches while we're sewing this. And then the aim is to sew in between the 2 rows of the gathering stitches. So line up your machine, keep your gathering threads out the back, so they're not going to get tangled up inside. And then we're going to line up the machine so that we're on the edge. And we're going to reverse at the start and stop. So let's reverse. And then let's put the needle in a work while we take out our first pin. Straighten everything out, make sure those raw edges are together. You can do a little bit of final adjustment now if you need to. Keep your gathers nice and straight and flat. And then we're going to sew in between those 2 rows of stitching. The gathers, and we can see it because we've got that white thread that showed us. Now I've got a little flat patch just here, so I'll take out this pin here, and without making it any longer, I'm just going to move those gathers along the edge, and that will just then, I hold on to my threads and I just use my fingernail just to loosen out those gathers a little bit. And then when we get to the end, we're going to reverse again. Take off our threads, making sure not to cut any of our gathering threads because we need those together. This helps you tell which ones you're wanting to cut and which ones you're not when they're a different colour. So I'm just going to cut my purple threads because that's my starting and stopping threads. And if you look on this side, you've got 1 row of stitches going all the way across here. I didn't change my stitch length look either, it's on a 3. Take that back down to a 2.2. Doesn't matter for this so much. What we're going to do next is we're going to fold the fabric away from the neat edge here. We're going to put a little edge on it, like that. And then we can then fold that under. You can see how that's going to encase those stitches really nicely. Before we do that though, because we've checked we've got no puckers in our cuff, we're going to then find one of our bobbin threads, not both at the same time, just one, and we're going to just pull that along. That one's broken. We're going to pull out these gathering stitches so that we've not got those to worry about now and they're not going to be showing. So generally speaking, you can just move all of your gathers along and you'll feel that thread just pulling through. And when you get to the end, it'll just pull it all the way out. And then you can find the corresponding top thread and give that a pull and that'll just pull out. And then we do the same with the remaining bobbin thread, just move that along. It's easier to do this bit with one each rather than with both of them, but when you're actually gathering them, you do need to use both threads at the same time. If it breaks off, don't worry, just take it through as much as you can. It just means your sewing machine might have caught some of your threads. And then you can use a quick unpick, but again, it's easy to see which colour thread you're trying to take out because you know which colour thread you used for your gathering stitches. Okay, just take out my gathering thread. So that's all nice and neat and ready to go. Gosh, it is fraying, isn't it? I forget how much taffeta does fray. I once made a whole outfit for myself in taffeta. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to fold this back and then we're going to turn it over like that. So we've got like a 1/4 inch seam, and then we're going to match up that 1/4 inch seam with the sewn line we've just made. Now I'm going to pin it in place, but I'm not going to stitch it by machine. You can for speed, and I think Sarah does in the book, but I personally, whenever I've got to do this, I always hand stitch it, because for that few extra moments you do get a much nicer finish. So let's just pin that in place so we can see those threads. Be careful not to pin your finger. 3 pins should do this, I think. 1/4 inch again. Keep it all together, and then we will then put another pin on this edge. Then I'm just going to just take a few moments just to hand stitch that together on the edge. So if you just where your pins are, just thread up your needle and just hand sew this down so that you cover up the stitch, and then you'll have a lovely finish on the front here, apart from the gathering. And then that will all be done. So that's what we're going to do on both of those. So once you finish this one, go back and do the other one and get it to the hand stitched edge. Just make sure that your cuff is the same length all the way along there. I can see that mine isn't. Therefore, if you just wait a second, if you just then fold that under a little bit more, just make sure that it is all the same length all the way along, same width on your cuff, and that will just keep it looking really nice and neat for you then. So I'll just repin mine now. Best to do it now if you see it, and then you're not going to then think afterwards once you've finished that it doesn't look as neat as you would like it to. Okay, I'll meet you back here once you've done your other leg. Okay, so here we are a little bit later on, and let's just do a sanity check before we go any further. If you notice when you cut out your pattern, you've got this little area here where you've got a little jump in the fabric on both sides here. So we've got those facing together at the moment. I think that's going to be the back opening, but just for the moment we want to make sure we've got 2 that are like that, and we've not got one without and one with, if you can see the difference. So we need those 2 to be together so that they'll match. So you've got a left and a right, you've not got 2 lefts or 2 rights. Also, I've just made sure that my pin mark in my right side of my fabric is still on the top there. So I'm working with the top edge of my, or the top working side of my fabric. And also we've put on our bottom bands on the bottom here. Ooh, get right in the line of it. So we've got those on now, and those are all looking all nice and even. So once we've done that, then we know we're going to be moving forward with a left and a right leg of our trousers. So just make sure you've got these bits together, because you need to have that together. What we're going to do then is, noting where our pin is, we're going to fold over each leg so that the band, the cuff around the bottom of the leg, is going to be together. And because that will now tell us which is the right side and the wrong side, and I'm doing this with right sides together, I'm going to put a pin through the band at the bottom. That'll make sure that we sew up the right seam, and I'm going to put a pin at the top here as well. We're going to do this on both legs. So that seam there should lie nice and flat for you. So again, on our other one, let's take our band, let's fold it in half so that the right sides are together. We can now take our pin out. We can pin through that band together. And then I'm just going to go up to this crotch point here and put that together so that that's sitting nicely too. Mine's slightly off on there, but I'll just trim that down. As I say, it'll just be that the seam allowance has just altered slightly when I was sewing that. That together. So we're going to take this to the machine, and then we're going to sew down this seam first, and then we're going to zigzag this edge. So again, on both of them, we're going to do both of them together, not together. We're going to do one at a time, but the same to both the legs, and we're going to start this off. So our machine, let's just check our tension and everything's all correct. And then once we're ready, let's pop this under the machine, make sure you can see. And then we are going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I hold on to my thread ends. Oops, can't get them on my thread. It doesn't want to pick up, that's it. And then a couple of stitches forward, a couple of stitches back. Needle in the work. That's going to hold everything together. And just put my pin away. And then we're going to just hold this straight, and we're just going to sew all the way down with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. Take your time when it comes to the cuff, because it's quite thick and this fabric doesn't like to have the needle going through. It's quite tightly bound. So just take your time through there and then reverse back at the end there again. Needle out of your work, take off your starting threads and your finishing threads, and then let's put this back in the machine again, change it over to a zigzag stitch, and we're just going to zigzag down this edge. If you've got an overlocker, you can overlock it as well, that's also true. And if you've not got a zigzag stitch on your machine because you've got a vintage machine, you can also use your pinking shears, which are these ones with these triangular blades. I think you'll have seen me use these before, and that also will neaten your edge for you. Just don't trim it too far. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up each leg, and where the little cutout, see where that little noggin is on the side there, that extra bit of fabric just along here, I'm going to push this seam towards that, and just right on the edge I'm going to put a few stitches. So I'm just going to open up that cuff edge, put my leg back into the machine, and just on the edge of the cuff I'm just going to do a few stitches to hold that together. Don't need to reverse or anything, just do a few stitches through it. You can just tack it down by hand if you want to. If your thread matches your stitching nicely, then you should be fine. And there's a little jump in my cuff, but because it's on the inside of the leg, you're not really going to see, not going to really see that. So I'll just put a few stitches through there. Okay, so let's go off and let's do the same to the other leg, and then I'll meet you back here. So now you'll have two legs looking like this with that seam allowance. I want you to turn one of them the right way round. So turn one of them so that the seam allowance is on the inside. And then what we're going to do is then we're going to take the other one, which is still with the seam allowance on the outside, and we're just going to put one inside the other, and we're going to match up this seam line that we've got here that's going to form the under sort of leg section. Both of those seam allowances go into the same side, and once you've got those in together, it's going to put a pin in to hold that together for us. We're going to follow the cut edge up, and we're going to go up to where that cutout or that little noggin is, and we're going to put a little line just there, like that. And then we're going to come to the other side, and the other side is going to go all the way up to the back of the waistband, and we're going to match that up and put another pin there. That's our anchor points, if you like, so that we've got those all matched up correctly. So it's going to look like this when it's ready, when it's finished. And then we're going to put some more pins in just down this seam, just to hold those raw edges together, so that then we can stitch this together. Just put one or two in it. Well, put in as many as you need. You might need one on the, oops, where's that pin gone? Might need a little bit on the curve edge just here. And then again around here too. Put another pin in there. So one side, just to be clear, one side you're not going all the way up to the top. So here, where that red pin is, there's the little noggin that cuts into the fabric, a little bit more fabric. That bit there is going to stay open on the waistband. But then from that point down, all the way down through to the crotch point, and then all the way up the other side to the top of the waistband is all going to be sewn together. Let's put this into the machine. 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to sew it with a straight stitch. So forward and backwards, and then put your needle in the work, just so you can start and take your pins out. Make sure your raw edges are together, otherwise you'll make the garment too small. We stop to take the pins out, we don't sew over pins. And what you'll need to do is, because this sort of curve is coming across this side of the sewing machine, as it starts to get closer, you're going to just concentrate on 1 inch in front of your presser foot for sewing at a time, because we've got to manipulate this fabric and this curve around. So just watch what I'm doing, and then that should hopefully help you. So let's just do another inch or so. And let's just stop. And let's just start to roll the fabric towards us, and then we'll take out the next pin, and I'm just concentrating, just run your finger along your fabric in front of your presser foot, make sure you've got no puckers there, and then just take it nice and steady round your curve, keep to your 1/4 inch, and then stop. And then we're going to roll the fabric forward again a little bit. It gets a little bit tight right in the corner here, but we can do it. And then we're going to go, make sure that fabric is straight again, a little bit more. Ooh, found a pin there that's dropped out. A little bit more. Stop before that pin on that crotch point. Let's take that one out. And if you need to, you leave your needle in the work and just lift up your presser foot and just adjust your fabrics to make sure that they're still right sides together. Well, they are right sides together, but make sure that there's no puckers in between that. And then I've only got 1 inch or so in front of me, so that's all I'm going to sew, just as we're moving forward. On these smaller garments, you have to just take it really steadily, because you're working with such tight curves that you need to give yourself the time. If you've got a speed dial on your machine, turn it down, just take it nice and steady, because as you've heard me say before, it's better to slow yourself down now and take it steady than it is to rush it and then have to get your unpicker out. So we'll try and just save you some hassle and some frustration by just taking it slowly the first time. So again, I'm just manipulating the fabric, I'm finding my edge of my seam, making sure it's smooth, and then I'm carrying on. I'm stopping before my next pin, so the pin's a bit of a breather space, isn't it? And then we're going to find, so that's the top pin that came out, isn't it? Just this fabric doesn't always hold on to pins very well. And then we're going to then curl round, and we're going to remember to stop and reverse sew at the point where that cut, that extra fabric is on the edge up there. On the edge up there, that's very Derby, isn't it, of me to say that? So this is what we've got now. We've got this curve here all sewn nice and steadily, a nice smooth curve all the way through there, and we've stopped. So this section here is still open where the extra fabric is on the edge. Now we're just going to go in and we're just going to zigzag along this edge again, or whatever your chosen neatening method is. Using the same technique, needle in the work, just stop for a moment just to twist things round. Make sure you've got nothing underneath that you don't want to be zigzagged as well. And then just keep stopping and just keep turning your fabric as you need to. The only bit we're really interested in keeping straight is that section immediately in front of the presser foot. Just reverse slightly, move out of the work, take off those edges, take off our starting threads, and then we can open this out and you'll see that we've got a pair of bloomers, a pair of trousers, whatever you want to call them. Just pull those edges out, and here we go. So this is the front without any of that opening, and at the back we've got that little opening there, which will form part of how we open and close this onto our character, whether it be Freya or Luna or one of the other characters. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do now is put that to one side, because we're now going to start and work on the actual bodice. Let me just find my pattern pieces.